Hello, my name is William Toti, retired Navy captain, former commanding officer, USS Indianapolis, former chief executive officer of Sparton Corporation, and my book is From CO to CEO, a practical guide for transitioning from military to industry leadership. And today, we're talking about Chapter 11, Taking the Helm in a Crisis. So let's get to it. I spent a lot of time in the book talking about the need to hit the reset button when you transition to industry and to take a fresh approach, think of yourself as starting over and be mentally prepared to learn new skills. And in fact, one of the chapters I say, if you're an officer, you think of yourself as being a second lieutenant or an ensign all over again, because you really are starting over and you really don't know what it's going to take to succeed in your new job. There's one area, though, that I think you don't want to hit the reset button. And that's why this chapter is called Taking the Helm in a Crisis. Because in a crisis situation, you are likely to have far better skills than many of your civilian counterparts will have. And so I talk about what I refer to as the worst day of my life, which was September 11, 2001, when I was in the Pentagon, when American Airlines Flight 77 slammed into our building. Now, I was lucky enough to have survived that day. Many of my friends did not. And I spent most of the day throughout the evening at the scene of the impact, trying to do what I could to help people who were affected by it. And we had limited success. We succeeded in some instances and we failed miserably in others. But through most of that day, what I witnessed was a myriad of organizations responding, everybody wanting to do their best to help the situation. But unlike New York, where you had a central governmental authority, the municipal government of New York City, in charge of all the responding factions, in Arlington, Virginia, where the Pentagon is located, we had dozens of organizations responding from various entities. Now, decades earlier, the federal government, which owns the property the Pentagon is on, had ceded the authority for crisis response to Arlington County, which is where the Pentagon is located. But Arlington County was a small county, small municipal government. It did not have the capacity to deal with an event of this magnitude. Now, luckily, organizations responded from all over, from larger Fairfax County, from District of Columbia, from federal organizations like the FBI, even the Secret Service responded. Fire departments from as far away as Delaware responded, all converging on the Pentagon to help with the crisis, which was wonderful. The problem was there was very limited ability for them to communicate with each other. The systems were lacking, and of course, the skills were lacking to deal with a crisis of this magnitude. And what I witnessed that day was kind of remarkable, that one individual showed up about an hour and a half, 2 hours into the event, a man by the name of John Van Alstyne, who was an Army general, worked in the Pentagon, and actually, General Van Alstyne had no authority to take charge in this crisis. But he had two things. Number one, he had moral authority. And number two, he understood and had experience with managing in a crisis. And what I saw was him exerting this moral authority and gentle, subtle leadership on the field and getting the organizations to coordinate with each other. He was that day, at that moment on the field, the voice of the Pentagon, and it was a remarkable event. He had more authority and more experience dealing with crises than any of the people who were responding that day. And you may be as well. When you transition to your civilian job, you may have more experience in handling a crisis, whether it's combat-related crisis or organizational crisis, dealing with preparing for and training to deal with incidents in the military than anybody who works with, for, or any of your bosses for that matter. And sadly, 9/11 wasn't the only time I found myself in the middle of a crisis. And I talk in the chapter about a second event that occurred while I was in industry, and the way I needed to draw upon those skills I learned on active duty to help manage through this second crisis. And the degree to which we were able to respond was only benefited from the experience I gained on active duty. And the point I make is, don't abandon all of those skills. And there may come a time when, even if you aren't the most senior person in your company responding to a crisis, you may have to volunteer and step in and help get things done. And that's what chapter 11 is all about. In chapter 12, which I titled A Capstone for Your Career, I'm going to talk about the process of getting promoted in your new civilian career, some things to avoid, and some things you're going to have to get used to. So I'll see you in chapter 12.